Good morning. This is a public hearing of the Chatham Conservation Commission being held on Wednesday, March 10th, 2021, in accordance with the provisions of the Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Chatham Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Chapter 272. It's being broadcast live on Channel 18 and recorded for the archives. My name's Janet Williams, and as Chair of the Conservation Commission, I'm opening this hearing at 9:02 a.m. Today's hearing is being conducted by remote video conference pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency orders prohibiting the gathering of large groups of people during the COVID emergency. Every effort's been made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. The agenda and copies of all documents for review today have been posted on the town website. To all participants, please, everybody, make sure you are muted. You mute yourselves now and remain muted until it is time for you to speak. The background noise creates a real distraction. There we go. If you're on the phone, you simply mute by *6 and you unmute by *6. As we consider each matter, I'll be asking for comments and questions from participants on the call. If you are muted, unmute yourself, state your name, and say that you wish to speak. Also, as a reminder, I think everybody's good on this, but let me double check. Make sure your camera is off until it's time for you to speak. Commissioners, of course, are welcome, encouraged, and presenters as well to turn their cameras on so we have more faces than just one to look at. As has been our way, all votes today will be by roll call, and so that we have a record of a quorum of the commission members attending today, I'll now ask each member to indicate their presence on the call. Commissioner Rawls.
Rawls here.
Delvecchio.
Delvecchio present.
Clark.
Clark here.
Okay, we are all here today unanimously, so we met the quorum. We've had a couple of requests for continuances today. So for those of you who have joined us, who may be here for any of the following matters, they will not be heard today. 83 Seagull Road and the associated property addresses that are part of the application from Outermost Harbor Marina for the dredge and disposal permit, that's been continued. 201 Old Harbor Road and 314 Morris Island Road. Paul, are there any other requests for continuances?
Madam Chair, this is Bill Riley.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Riley.
We'd like to request a continuance to 68 Shell Drive.
Okay. Do you have a date?
We'd like to go out 1 month.
Okay, that takes us to April 14th.
That'll be fine.
Okay. All right, so we add 68 Shell Drive to the list of matters that will not be heard today. Continue to April 14th. Thank you.
Janet?
Yes, Tom.
You mentioned 314 Morris Island and 201 Old Harbor, but I didn't hear, probably it's my hearing.
No,
I didn't hear a new date.
Yeah, April 14th.
April 14th, thank you.
Everything's being continued to April 14th. So it'll be a full agenda that day, since all 4 of those are going to April 14th.
We're always a full agenda.
Yeah. That's how we like it. All right, Paul, I guess with that, we're ready to get underway here. Well, you're muted if you're trying to give us the first matter. Paul?
Janet,
Yeah.
This is Mark from Channel 18. I don't see Paul as a participant.
He called, I believe. One of these numbers is him. All right, well, I'll just kick it off. We'll wait until maybe he walked away from his desk. But the first item on the agenda is a request to amend an existing order of conditions, 22 Captain Sears Way, 22 Captain Sears Way Realty Trust, SC 103354, request to amend an existing order of conditions under SC 103354 to include proposed construction of a dwelling, pool, and patio that differs from what was approved. Assessor's map 11C, parcel H17, and this is phase 2.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Bill Riley on behalf of 22 Captain Sears Way Realty Trust. While the building design is substantially different, the mitigation planting plan is going forward, I think, without major change. Teresa is online. Dave Clark will go through the numbers for you. David?
Good morning, everybody. As Bill stated, it's a completely different house, and that's the reason for the amendment. The house is a little smaller than what was originally permitted, and that because it's smaller, we were able to get it further away from the resource area. So overall, the amount of house within your jurisdiction has gone down by 300 square feet. As far as the rest of the project, we still have a pool and patio on the water side of the house. It's obviously a different configuration, but again, because the house is smaller, overall within the 50 and 100, the project has been reduced by 111 square feet from the original proposal. Everything else, like Bill said, everything else remains the same. The amount of mitigation, actually no mitigation, it's a restoration plan. No mitigation was required for this because there was a net reduction in the 0 to 50, actually an elimination of over 2,000 square feet of structure and hardscape in the 0 to 50. And that's about it. It appears very straightforward to us. It's just a swap of a house, and the benefit is there's 111 square foot reduction.
Okay. Thank you, David. I hear you about not mitigation. I guess it's part of the land management plan. On this new landscape plan, it does call out mitigation areas. And it appears it's a little confusing to me, at least, and maybe Teresa can help with this, how this new landscape plan interacts with the approved land management plan, the planting plan that was approved. Some of these areas seem to be different now.
Hi, good morning. This is Teresa Sprague with Blue Flax Design. So we did work very closely with the landscape architect that you see their plan, Matthew Cunningham Landscape Design. You see their plan in front of you to make sure that what they were planning for the landscape transitioned well into what we've already proposed for the restoration area. I guess the only minor change is directly in front of the pool. There's a little bit of change to the grading in that area. If you see we did submit a revised restoration plan dated revised date January 18th, 2021. I don't know if you have that available to look at. That might help as we kind of walk through this.
Mm-hmm.
But I could probably share my screen if.
Yeah, let me stop and you can do that because I don't have it here in front of me.
Okay.
Hi all. I also wanted to interject. This is Matthew Cunningham, the landscape architect on the team,
Hi.
and also Ryan Wampler is a senior associate with my firm, who is the project manager. In case there are any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, are you able to see my screen?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you can see here's the new house layout, the proposed pool. You can see there's some change, just minor change in regrading just off the proposed pool. And the only thing we've done is just adjusted our planting to make sure that we're completely planting out that slope. The actual square footage of the restoration hasn't changed at all. It's simply a matter of, excuse me, rearranging some of the plantings just so that we're working with the new layout of the pool and the grading as in the changes that were proposed between the plans. On the north side of the lot, the area was proposed to be meadow and continues to remain meadow. One of the other things that we worked with Ryan and Matthew on is the fact that the meadow grasses and wildflowers that we proposed in the area that we called out as meadow are actually going to continue throughout the rest of the more traditional upland landscape. So it will really transition beautifully. And and I'll let Ryan and Matthew speak to this, but with their landscape plan and their landscape planting plan, they also incorporated many of the plant species that we're using in the restoration area. Again, so the idea is to create a continuous sort of naturalized landscape, and that's what the new property owners were really going for. There is a minor adjustment to the pathway on the north side. Again, the idea is that we had originally were required, there were multiple paths through here. We eliminated those paths and kind of kept it down to one major loop path. Although they are proposing a loop path through the meadow, there is going to be a vegetable garden, I believe, planted just outside of the 50-foot buffer and perhaps even outside of the 100-foot buffer in that meadow area. But otherwise, the restoration plan is remaining entirely the same.
Okay, thank you. Do we want to, does anybody have questions for Teresa, or do we want to hear about the landscape plan before we start asking any questions? Hearing nothing, let's go to Matthew with the landscape plan. Do you have the ability to share your screen, or do you want me to do that so you can?
Could you possibly share the screen?
Yep. Let me pull it up here. All right. There we go.
Terrific. Thank you.
Okay.
Our clients are very focused on creating a home that is very much rooted in the surrounding ecologies of the site. We're building upon the work that Teresa and her company have done in eradicating the invasive species on the property, and we're really looking towards developing a home and a landscape that is thoroughly rooted in the surrounding context. With that in mind, as Teresa mentioned, we're focusing almost exclusively on a native and indigenous plant palette that incorporates meadows, lots of upland grass conditions, and native shrubs, with one exception that we are including some fruit trees for the homeowners to have for edible landscaping. We have worked to develop a pervious driveway condition that is going to return water to the surrounding watershed. We've been very careful not to, or to stick within the impervious surface calculations that were previously approved. And from a lawn and a mown lawn perspective, we're intending to do a hybrid combination of fescue and potentially microclover in an effort to reduce water consumption and to eliminate the need for any types of fertilization. So in the big picture, again, we're really trying to establish sensible and thoughtful site ecologies that really respond to the surrounding context.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, now I will turn to other commissioners who might have some questions. Bob Rawls, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think in general, the amendment does make some improvements from an ecological perspective to the previous plan. So that's, I applaud that. It is often the case with amendments like this one, though, where it's hard to follow, and this is no exception, the actual changes from the previously approved coverage numbers. When I look at the narrative and when I look at the coverage table, I would just encourage David and Teresa and whoever else is involved to go through them again and make sure that they line up with each other. I couldn't follow especially in the narrative, It's unclear to me whether some of the numbers in some cases were talking about the previous plan, and whether it's talking about changes from that, or was really just referring to the previous plan. So I sort of gave up trying to follow it all. I accept the idea that there's a reduced coverage, and that's good. But I think just for the record, it'd be good to make sure all those numbers are clearly stated. As I say, it's often the case with these amendments. The other question I had was this vegetable garden. It is new, right? It is new relative to the previous plan.
Yes, it is.
Correct.
All right, so I see one drawn on the landscape site plan. So I guess that's sort of a hybrid plan. I don't know the size of it. Teresa said that it was maybe outside the 0 to 50 to 100, but it looks to me like it's squarely in the 50 to 100, at least as drawn. And it says that it has a 6-foot high wire mesh fence surrounding it. So, I mean, it would be good to know the dimensions of that garden, but also, of course, having a fence impedes progress, wildlife progress through the area, as we all know. I understand the need for a fence because of rabbits and deer and so forth. But was that, we need to know how the size of it, and I guess we're seeing more and more requests for vegetable gardens, either in the 50 to 100, or sometimes even within the NDZ, and it's kind of a new thing. And it's not, I guess, taken into account when it comes to coverage calculations. However, when you consider what a vegetable garden is, it doesn't offer much wildlife value at all. It's sort of devoid. Animals can't go through there. They can't live there. They can't eat what's in there. And, it's not hardscape, but it's sort of lost, except to pollinators, I guess, in a few cases, to wildlife. So I'm not sure what to do about that. So I assume that you didn't take into account the size of the vegetable garden in any sort of changes in calculations.
No, we did not. Just so you're aware, this is Ryan Wampler from Matthew Cunningham Landscape Design. Right now, the vegetable garden is 40 foot by 25 foot, and this was something that the client was very much interested in, having a good-sized vegetable garden for food production. So I think they wanted to kind of maximize the area. And it's specifically in this area due to some sun and shade studies that we have done. Basically, with outside of the 100-foot, we get into a lot more canopy trees and a lot more shaded conditions, which is kind of the reasoning for putting it between the 50 and the 100-foot setback. I do know that this client is very interested in the food production, but also in being very green about it. So they're so any fertilizer, herbicide, stuff like that are definitely not in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, and that's because of the pandemic, we've had a lot of an uptick in people wanting vegetable gardens, and it's a good thing in general. But I hope you see my point about the fact that it results in a reduced habitat, really, in many ways. So we need to figure out a way of accounting for that whenever we come up with these calculations. I don't know what to do about it right now.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ross, this is Teresa Sprague. If I could just interject briefly, we're still looking at well over 30,000 square feet of complete naturalized area. And I agree that the vegetable garden itself, we could say, doesn't provide specific wildlife habitat, although we certainly know that that's why they're calling out a large fenced area around it, because certainly it does provide forage for a lot of critters that like to get into at least my vegetable garden, I know. But I also want to point out that the fence directly around the vegetable garden is not impeding wildlife from moving throughout the area. It's simply impeding wildlife from getting into the vegetable garden itself. And by that, I'm thinking deer, squirrels, and chipmunks and other things are still going to be able to get in there and be the the bane of all vegetable gardeners, as you know and I know. So I just think, as far as considering its structure, it's still going to function and provide ecological value in that it's soil. It's going to allow for infiltration. They are managing, this particular property owner is managing their garden organically. So I don't think it's inappropriate to have that garden within the 100-foot buffer. Certainly outside of the 50 is important, but within the 50 to 100, it's really low impact as far as use. And so it's just something to consider.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a total, I'm sorry. It's not a total loss in wildlife value. It's reduced.
Somebody,
Well, this is Bill Riley.
yes, Bill.
Okay, so with all due respect to Bob, I don't think the critters are entitled to 100% of the property either. I mean, in other words, there's no performance standard that says, you can't have a vegetable garden or you can't have a small fenced area within the 50 to 100. So I mean, I appreciate Bob's concerns, but I think on a project like this, where so much 30,000 square feet is being completely naturalized, that to raise this as a concern, I think is just going a little too far. That's all.
Well, Bill, with all due respect to you, this started with Bob asking about the dimensions of the garden because it wasn't listed on the plan. So it's important to understand exactly what impact it has on the performance standard for wildlife habitat. It has, as Teresa said, some impact. It's up to each of us as decision makers to weigh that against the 30,000 square feet of naturalization, but it does have some. So it's a perfectly adequate area of inquiry.
And just to be clear, Bill, I'm not arguing that the garden shouldn't be there. I'm saying that we need to properly account for it in terms of ecological impact.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know what to make of all that. But so, Teresa, are you saying that, or the mitigation more? Does it? Let's just say that we're hardscape, or let's say half hardscape. Would that account for it as well? In other words, do you have more mitigation than you need anyway?
We have far more in the form of restoration. As David pointed out, no mitigation is actually required because there's a reduction from what was previously existing. So
Right.
Under the regulations, no mitigation was required, but the restoration plan was done to help enhance the site. And obviously with the awareness that while no mitigation is required, there is certainly a change in use and the intensity of use. And so we're if I hate to use the word mitigation and restoration interchangeably because it gets a little confusing with the regulations, but basically to account for the fact that there is a change in use and intensity of use in the property. So the restoration went forward that way.
Right. Okay. So I guess that's really it. I just would ask you to go over the narrative in the coverage tables to make sure they all square up.
Yes, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that, and we'll be sure to do that.
And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Bob Del Vecchio.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the overall project and I understand that it's a win-win for the environment, for the ecology of the area, and for the wildlife. So I see it as a great project from that standpoint. I also like the turf lawn, or the lawn with the fescue and the clover, to provide some nitrogen for the growth of the lawn. I think that's a great thing without the use of fertilizers, hopefully, in the future. And is that lawn going to be irrigated at all?
Hi there. The lawn will be irrigated to get it established, and then essentially over a course of 1 or 2 seasons, I actually have a clover lawn myself at my home, and the irrigation requirements are significantly lower than a conventional lawn. The clover in particular is incredibly drought tolerant, so the goal is to simply just get it established and then to tweak it down.
Okay. And And where is that lawn going to be actually? Is it going to be within the 50 or within the 50 to 100, or where is that lawn, if you could specify that?
Sure. All of the lawn areas are the light green. I'm trying to find an annotation tool here, but I don't
I can just
see.
we're
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Janet. All of those lime green areas are mown fescue and clover lawn.
Okay, so they're outside of the 50 then.
Yep.
Correct. They're outside of the 50. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's the story. You know, aside from the vegetable garden, you know, I would put in the order of conditions that it would be an organic garden, and that seems to be the route that the homeowner is going to go. So that's a good thing. So other than that, I'd approve it as it is.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, questions or comments from you?
Oh, you asking me?
Yep.
Okay, I had a, excuse me, the micro clover is a new thing for me, so I'm going to ask the usual dumb questions. Is it the rhizomes of the clover that interject nutrients into the soil, or do you have to plow it under in order to get the advantage of its nutrients?
So the micro clover fixes its own nitrogen, and each individual clover plant creates nitrogen nodules in its root system. And the fescue roots actually attach themselves to those nodules, and they are spoon fed from the clover. So there's no disturbance. Once the clover sod goes down, it really is just like a regular lawn. But what I've found from using it at my home and through many of our residential landscapes is that the requirements for mowing are significantly reduced. So I mow my own lawn with an electric lawnmower, and I live within a sensitive watershed area where we have frogs and salamanders and such. And last summer, I only had to mow my lawn 7 times total. So it's a pretty amazing. I wouldn't call it revolutionary, but it is certainly an amazing change from the typical consumption of a more conventional lawn.
When you say you mow it, do you capture the mowing or the mowed plants, and what do you do with them? Do you plow them under? Do you use them for compost? Do you throw them away?
At my home and for most of our clients, we simply just have it mulched right back into the lawn. So a simple mulching mower can take care of it. It's one of the reasons why the clover and the fescue are blended together is that clover, it takes a little bit of time in the spring for the warm weather to hit before it really starts greening up. So the fescue is essential for preventing erosion and minimizing any kind of migration of soils. So that root system really holds, that fibrous root system really holds the soils in. So from a mowing perspective, just a conventional lawn mowing can easily maintain this.
But they should use a mower that basically plows it back in. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's not plowing or disrupting the soils at all. It's a mulching condition. So essentially the thatch and the debris from the lawnmower is left right on top of the surface of the lawn, and it helps build the soils and helps. There's no disturbance to the lawn.
Okay, it's not like smothering anything.
Oh no. It's actually this was originally, believe it or not, microclover lawns were developed as an attempt to reduce mowing and maintenance and irrigation demands on golf courses. And there's a company that we work with out of Rhode Island that we specify this material from, and it's pretty amazing. It's been a really exciting addition to our arsenal in combating drought resistance or working with drought resistant plantings and reduced maintenance and irrigation demands.
Does the clover contribute to erosion control, or is that basically the fescue that's doing that?
It does on some level. The clover has a pretty fibrous root system as well. But the goal behind the fescue really is to have year-round green coverage on the soil, so it helps prevent wind or erosion from wind. And the clover itself, it's herbaceous, so it dies down to the ground in the winter. And usually by, I don't know, maybe early to mid-May, you've got a full lush green lawn.
Thank you. That's all the questions I had,
Sure.
Janet.
Thank you,
Sure.
Tom. Karen, any questions?
No, I think they've been covered, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that my questions have been covered as well. And I guess with that, is there a motion then, if there's anybody have any other issues, questions, comments, before we send this to the April 7th work session for the amended order of conditions?
Yeah, Rawls moved to continue to the April 7th work session for OOCs.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Roll call vote for 22 Captain Sears Way to continue to April 7th for the amended order. Commissioner Rawls,
Aye.
Delvecchio,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Latin,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. That's unanimous. We will meet you again on April the 7th. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we are ready to move on. I'm not sure Paul has resolved his problem, so I'll keep going. The next one on the agenda, notices of intent, 41 Locust Lane, Jonathan O. and Alicia W. Downs, SE10, I don't have the full SE number yet. Proposed construction of a catwalk and dug-in steps to access Black Pond at 41 Locust Lane, Assessor's Map 15F, Parcel 53. Stephanie?
Hi, good morning. Stephanie
Hi.
Seagull here.
Good morning, Stephanie.
I am representing John and Alicia Downs, who are the owners of the property at 41 Locust Lane. Teresa Sprague is here also to answer any questions. This property abuts Black Pond. There is just about a year ago, we had a we got a project approved for the removal of the existing building and construction of a new building. Along with the approval of that was proposed mitigation and the removal of invasives over a very extensive area, a little over 12,000 square feet. That work has already begun, and the homeowner just recently removed the existing building, and so the construction on the new building and pool and hardscaping is to be underway very soon. There is abutting Black Pond. There is an inland bank that confines the pond. Between that and the upland area, there is a bordering vegetated wetland. Adjacent to the BVW is a slope that goes up to the 50-foot buffer, and the proposed building and hardscaping is all located outside of the 50-foot buffer. So the homeowner obviously would like to have access to the pond for to be able to launch a kayak or just be able to sit and enjoy the view. So what we're proposing in order to provide access from the upland area across the BVW to the pond is a beginning at the outer edge at the 50-foot buffer, a footpath going down the hill that will transition into a series of dug-in timber steps where the slope becomes a little more steep. Then across the BVW, we're proposing an elevated catwalk. that will traverse the BBW and end at the bank at the edge of the pond. All the access will be limited to 4 feet in width. The dug-in timber steps will be constructed using untreated wood, such as ipe or western red cedar. The catwalk will also be limited to 4 feet in width, elevated on posts. The proposed deck elevation is between 2.5 and 3.5 feet above the wetland elevation. That combined with the proposed decking that we're specifying is through flow vinyl decking. It has, I included a cut sheet. It has openings in it, so it allows the sunlight to penetrate through the decking. So between the spaces in the decking itself and the elevated catwalk, the sunlight will be able to get through to the wetland vegetation and allow that vegetation to grow beneath the structure. As far as the construction of this, the sequence of the construction, they'll start at the outer edge, at the path. The dug-in steps will provide the access to the first section of the catwalk. They will start from the inland edge of the catwalk and work their way out toward the pond. No vegetation beyond the footprint of the footpath or the dug-in steps will be disturbed. There's not really any vegetation there now because of the land management work that's going on. And the limit of work at the catwalk will be restricted to the catwalk itself and 3 feet on either side of the catwalk. Any vegetation to be removed will be removed by hand and removed from the site. All excavation will be performed by hand. Any excess excavated material will be removed from the site, and the areas shall be restored, revegetated as necessary when work is complete. This does require a structure within the Conservancy District does require a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. That application has not been filed yet. We'll certainly have that filed before. This will be continued, but we will have that filed before the continued hearing. And otherwise, I think it's a pretty typical means of accessing the upland area, from the upland area to the water's edge. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephanie. Let me start with Bob Del Vecchio and see what questions or comments he might have for you.
Okay, you mentioned something about the steps being outside of the 50, but they're in the 50, I think. I don't know, maybe I misunderstood you, Stephanie.
Well, beginning at the outer edge of the 50.
Beginning at the outer edge of the 50. And are those gonna, the tread material, is that just gonna be earth, or is it gonna be anything beyond that? Will you step? Will it be gravel, or will it be just, grass, or?
I haven't discussed that. Obviously, it'll be pervious. I have not discussed that with the owner. They may want to do shell, but I can certainly provide that to you.
Okay. Would this be constructed before the planting by Blue Flax?
I am not sure when they're starting the planting. Teresa, do you have a schedule for the replanting to begin?
Well, we just finished the initial invasive species removal, and as you can see, we do have a little bit of winterberry holly and some high bush blueberry, but that was really the only native vegetation. We've left all existing native vegetation in that area. We know we've got an intense seed bank in this area, and that we've seeded the entire area. If you noticed, we seeded the low area, wet area with a wetland seed mix, and then the slope itself, where it's been blanketed, we seeded with a native grass and wildflower mix. So we should see that starting to green up pretty quickly. I was actually walking out there earlier this morning, and everything is really starting to bud out quickly. There were also a large number of red-winged blackbirds in the tupelos and the red maple that are still existing. So it is still providing habitat, even though it's pretty bare. So that was good to see. But with that, it will start greening up very quickly, but our intention is to not start planting until the fall in order for us to go in and do some follow-up invasive species management, because we know there was so much porcelainberry in that area. We know we're going to have resprouts this season. So we'll be following up and doing selective management throughout this season with the goal of replanting in the fall.
So planting could occur after the installation of the structure.
Walking steps. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can occur after that, as well as the fact that the area is staked out. So we will, if let's say they were not to undertake the catwalk installation until 2022, we would plant accordingly, keeping in mind the area where the catwalk is going to be installed.
Okay. Those are the questions I had initially. Thank you, Janet.
Okay, thank you. Tom, questions from you?
Yeah, I got a couple. I always get concerned when I see a path that is, in essence, perpendicular to the slope, because that often means that there's a substantial risk of erosion. So what is being done to prevent water running down the path or across it in some way that it would increase the erosive effect on the slope?
Well, the path will be vegetated. As Teresa said, the area has already been seeded with native grasses. So that the path will be a grass path. It'll be mown as necessary, maybe a couple times a season. And then at the bottom of the hill where the dug-in steps are, in between the treads will be pervious. So any runoff going down the path will be intercepted by the steps and allow infiltration there.
Okay, I had a question about through flow for the decking. And by the way, just to my fellow commissioners, I'm used to seeing these kind of situations where it's a salt marsh and we get very concerned about light getting into the plantings. This is the first time I have to admit that I've seen a BVW in this kind of circumstance. And so we may want to start thinking about light requirements because in essence, it's the same kind of ecological niche. It's just a different planting regime that's there. So I just throw that out as something we need to think about. How much light makes it through? I went looking to see what I could find on through flow, and I didn't see anything about the percentage of light that it lets through. Do you have numbers about that?
I do not. I may be able to. Pull up the so can I share my screen?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Because I had the same question. I did a little bit of digging too, because we see through flow all the time now. And I was wondering how much gets through. Couldn't find it. So
this is just the brochure, I guess. It shows you what it is. It doesn't give you the percentage, but you can see that a good portion of it is open.
Mhm.
If you could find that out, that would, I mean, that would be very interesting.
Okay.
Because here's another product that might
Yep.
lend itself to solving some of the problems we see weekly, you might say, or
Yeah.
at least monthly.
Okay, I'll see what I can find for
It
a
would bear on the issue we struggle with about height on these catwalks. The relation, you know, the percentage of light that gets through would have something to do with how high we might require them to be set. So that would be really great if you have access to any of that data.
Okay, I'll see what I can find.
That would be great.
Yeah, and then the other thing that has popped up with salt marshes, which we may want to look to for an analogy, I don't know, is that at least the most recent studies seem to suggest that for maximum light, the catwalk or the pier, whatever it is, should be north-south, and just because there's shading, I noticed this one is north-northeast, it would appear, which means there'll be some reduction because of its orientation. So if you could, I know this is out, I don't even know if this kind of information can be found, but the other thing that would be helpful is to know to what extent the orientation reduces the amount of light that makes it underneath, in contrast to what would be a north-south orientation. Just to give us an idea, again, like Janet was saying, you know, it may affect the height of the catwalk, that is, because that seems to help get more light underneath. So that may be something we would want to give consideration to.
Okay. Anything else, Tom?
No, that's it. I heard silence, so I was wondering if I mushed it up too much.
I think, no, you just put it out there I think for Stephanie to consider, and for all of us to consider as we made notes about it, and we'll keep it in mind.
So if I guess if I could ask, and I understand the logic, the theory, north-south orientation would be preferred. Don't think I know that's not possible
right.
here.
No, I recognize that. The reason I was commenting on it was not because I'm suggesting you have to switch to north-south. That the site obviously doesn't allow that to happen. But so that you can calculate, perhaps, I don't know if it's possible, the reduction from a north-northeast orientation compared to a north-south orientation, so that we would have some idea about how much the orientation is blocking out light to the vegetation underneath. And if we understand that, then we might be able to suggest for your consideration some changes, for example, in the height of the decking above the BVW in order to increase light to the plants below, and in that way to not create a shaded area where plants are going to slowly die.
Well, I guess I'd have to ask if this were in a true north-south orientation, at what elevation would I be comparing the shadow from a north-south? You know what I mean?
Excellent question. You're 3 steps ahead of me. But I would say, why don't we go with what you're proposing for a height, and then see how much I'll use the term loss, what shading, how much, what percentage of the light penetration is blocked out by the catwalk. In other words, if it's something small, it might be insignificant and nothing for us to even bother ourselves with. If it turns out to be a lot, we might want to give thought and discuss with you the height of the decking.
Okay, I'll see what I can figure out.
I appreciate that. I reckon this is probably something new and out of the woodwork, but it is something that's been brought to our attention by the recent research on salt marshes.
Yep. Okay, anything else, Tom?
I just will point out, salt
Right.
marshes tend to be more wide open and exposed. Here, we've got tall trees on either side, so they are casting some shadow on the location of this as well.
Excellent point to be considered.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all very, that's useful information. Tom, anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, Bob, Rawls?
Yeah, just since we're talking about the decking, I know that we've had decking before. You meant, and Janet, you said we've seen through flow before. What I was reminded of here is that this is a plastic decking, which I was actually as concerned about the plastic nature of the decking as I was to how much light was coming through. And because plastic can leach, and I know that we've seen decking before that was aluminum, which doesn't leach, of course. Of course, it's going to be more expensive. But anyway, that is a concern that I have is about the material that the decking is made of due to leaching into the water. So anyway, something to think about whether or not there are alternatives to that. If especially if we determine that there's not enough light coming through there. I was out there yesterday, dodging the heavy machinery, and got down to the water. I was actually confused why the catwalk is being put in, but then because at the end where the catwalk would be, there's a fair amount of vegetation in the water, and so then you answered it by saying that they wanted to launch kayaks there. So that leads to a couple of questions. Where will the kayaks be stored, and how will they get through that vegetation without cutting it?
The kayaks would be stored on the walkway off to the side. And yeah, I did see that vegetation in the water. And I also noticed a similar situation on the property to the north that already has a walkway. And it just through use, I'm sure they have created a path, just a few feet wide from the end of the walkway through that vegetation that's submerged. So that would just, from the end of the catwalk, they would have to, drag the kayak through that vegetation until they get out to the water.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. And of course, that's not a good thing. So when you say the kayaks be stored to the side, you mean just sitting on top of the catwalk?
On the decking.
Just on top of the deck. So they'd get down there to the kayaks, and they would have to, I guess, push it off the end of the catwalk or the side of the catwalk into the marsh area. They might want to think about some sort of strapping mechanism to strap the kayaks onto the deck. For no other reason. I mean, first of all, it'd just be better for many ways, including the fact that it's not going to blow off and then.
Well, we are showing a handrail on one side, so that will give them something that they could anchor the kayaks to.
Right, as long as we of course will have a standard condition where the kayaks can't be stored on the marsh or in the vegetation. It has to be off. And so just as long as they understand that. So I don't know what to do about this vegetation that will obviously be trampled on, and if not even cut, for them to get the kayaks out into the water. I mean, we all know it's going to happen.
What I tried to do, and
I don't have any thoughts on that or any solutions.
Would you object to a 2 to 3 foot wide path cut through that vegetation from the end of the catwalk to the water?
I guess it's not a good thing. Perhaps at that point we need to talk about compensation for it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think cutting it is the right answer. I mean, maybe we can't go any further than obligating the homeowner to take all due care when launching kayaks to make sure that the vegetation isn't damaged. So it's an obligation on them to monitor how that usage is impacting the vegetation and protect it. Definitely not cut it.
I could see having let's get a picture after a year, 2 or 3 to see what that looks like there then.
Yeah, they'll be doing monitoring reports for the first 3 years anyway with all of this land management and and mitigation plan. So we could include impact on the plants in the pond itself and the marsh.
And if we see impact out there, then we could talk about, as I said, ways of compensating for it. Maybe perhaps additional plantings. I don't know. It's a tough one, but it's obviously going to be an impact.
Yeah.
This is Teresa Sprague. If I could just add something. So you probably, I know if you've all been out there and saw it, obviously the place now is wide open, so it's really easy to see what's going on to both the north and the south. So to the south of this property, there was recently a catwalk installed. I believe it's Ocean Terrace. I can't remember the exact street number, but a boardwalk has recently been installed there, and you can actually see it from this particular property if you go down. I know I was there this morning, and that marshy area is frozen right now, so it's easy to walk on, but it's definitely wet in that area. And then, of course, just to the north, there is an existing boardwalk at grade that we noted when we were out there with Callie when we were doing the original permitting. And there's really, the edges of that pond are really well vegetated. And obviously they're accessing the pond directly to the north and directly to the south of this area. And the areas in between where the small access area is from the catwalk to the south and the existing boardwalk to the north, it is the area that is completely well vegetated around the pond. So there is some minor disturbance right at the area where the access is going to be taking place. But otherwise, all of the vegetation around that pond is in good condition. Of course, both to the north and south of this property, there's a significant amount of invasive vegetation as well. And so we'll be continuing to manage that from creeping back into this area. As is part of our ongoing long-term management plan, but just something to consider. Yes, there will be some disturbance of the vegetation right at the entrance point of the catwalk, but there is no way anybody will be stepping off of this catwalk, particularly during the season, because literally you will be up to your thighs in muck if you attempt to step off of the catwalk in order to do anything. So I don't see any damage to vegetation surrounding the catwalk.
Good to hear. Okay, Bob, other questions?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Karen, any questions or concerns or comments?
My concern was with the grass that was in the water and how that was going to be managed. So we've just dealt with that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other issues or questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yep.
I know that Blue Flax, Teresa submitted, the plan to restore this area with plantings and so forth. And I'm wondering if this catwalk were installed, whether she could plant around that and around the stairs just to make sure there wasn't any erosion and make sure that the BVW was planted correctly and so forth.
Yes, absolutely. And when we do the planting, we are required to notify the commission and submit a monitoring report immediately after planting. So as we're doing the planting around the boardwalk, we can certainly document that and share that with the commission.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Good. I just made a note of that. That'll be helpful. Okay, so do I understand from what Mary said this morning that the copies of the project narrative the hard copies were not distributed to commission members. Bob and I got them electronically, but she said that they just came in yesterday and she had not been able to distribute them. So we do have to continue this so that everybody has a chance to make sure that there's nothing in any of that they want to ask further about. So I would suggest we take this to the March 24th hearing and hopefully see if there's any other comments or questions about it and wrap it up at that point so that it can still go to April 7th. So is there a motion?
Yes, Bob Rawls moved to continue to March 24th work session for additional.
It's not the work session, it's a hearing.
I'm sorry, hearing.
And if all questions are resolved at that point, it can go to April 7th. We'll just take it to the 24th.
Clark, second.
Okay. Roll call vote to continue 41 Locust Lane to March 24th. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Delvecchio.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's unanimous. We'll regroup on March 24th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, Paul, moving on.
Morning.
Morning.
Yeah, just for the record, 41 Locust has an SE number. It's 3478.
3478? Thank
Yes.
you. Okay.
Moving on to 73 Kent Road. Philip Hu and Jessica Hu, SE10, no SE number yet. Proposed demolition of existing dwelling and swimming pool. Construction of a new dwelling and swimming pool. At same address, Assessors Map 12J, Parcel G4.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Bill Riley on behalf of Jessica Guo and Philip Cho. Dave Clark is online. And Teresa Sprague is our plant mitigation specialist. This calls for the removal of the existing house and swimming pool, which are on the side of the moderately steep bank, and move the building back a little bit. It's a difficult site. And so I'll have David explain, the conservation aspects and see, and then we'll have Teresa go through the mitigation plan.
Okay.
David Clark, from Clark Engineering on behalf of the applicants. So as stated, this is a demolition rebuild of existing dwelling and swimming pool. If you look at the site plan and you've been out to the site, you see that the swimming pool and patio is basically at the top of the bank. Given when this was constructed, probably 50 years ago or so or more, there were no wetland regulations, and they were able to significantly alter the site and I believe push material down the slope to create a level area for the pool as well as the house on the upper level. So the idea is to demolish everything and move it back as far back as practicable. That will allow us to restore almost the entire area where the pool is now with native vegetation, and also move the pool equipment away from the top of the bank towards the north end of the property. So that'll give us an opportunity to restore a corridor through there, which presently doesn't exist. At the end of the day, within the 0 to 50, where there's actually a decrease of a little over 150 square feet, because the 100-foot buffer encompasses most of the rest of the site, there is an increase in the 50 to 100 of 850 square feet. But we've tried to put all that within the existing disturbed areas of the lot. So you see a new driveway, primarily where the existing driveway and garage is, and the new garage being attached to the building on the southeast corner. As you know, we were before you back in the beginning of the year or December now, I can't remember, for the septic system that's been installed. And The leach field will remain where it is. We will be able to put in a new septic tank because now we'll be able to be gravity feed to the leach field. There is I did provide a alternative site plan because at one point we were looking at possibly redeveloping the house in its current location. The applicants bought the property because the house was right there at the top of the bank. But there's significant issues with redeveloping within the existing footprint. One is that the pool needs a lot of work because of its age. And because of the value of the work to be done, everything needs to be brought up to code, and you really can't have a automatic pool cover on a kidney-shaped pool. So, so one of the alternatives was to redo the pool where it is, take advantage of the great views that it has. But the problem is access to rebuilding it in its location. So that's why the shape of the house is significantly different than what the actual proposal is. As explained in the narrative, this proposal was rejected in that it most likely going to cost more than just starting over again because of the amount of work that needs to be done to the existing house. That's pretty much it. As far as the performance standards for a coastal bank, we believe we're meeting that. In that the existing patio to the pool is right there at the top of the bank, providing no buffer. And by moving it back, we're allowing for a vegetated area to absorb additional runoff and take some of the overburden off the top of the bank. So we feel at the end of the day that the stability of bank is increased because we're removing the overburden and pulling everything back as far as practicable. That's really the only resource area we're dealing with here. There is a little bit of a salt marsh down at the bottom of the bulkhead, but really this project has no impact on that because there's a bulkhead there, and we will be providing erosion controls. So if there's any questions on the site plan, I'll be happy to answer them. And Teresa's here to talk about the restoration and mitigation.
Okay, thank you, David. Before Teresa gets started, I do have a question about the site plan. So it looks to me like the top of the bank was delineated based on the policy and the change in slope. So yes. When this was flattened out to put the pool in, that would put the top of the bank here. You're going to be doing regrading to reestablish a slope in this area that presumably pre-existed this pool. What impact will that grading have on the delineation of the top of the bank? Would that move it back up so that it's once again right at the edge of the pool?
A future commission could make that call, unless there was some documentation in the order of conditions that keeps the regulated top of bank where it's shown on the plan now.
Mm-hmm. But in terms of how you would, how somebody in the field, an expert, someone with your expertise looking at that, would you have presumed that the top of the bank is at the top?
Well, 20 years from now, if you didn't do a research of the record, an engineer or surveyor might place the top of the bank right at the new pool location. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the other thing we can do is, to avoid that issue, would be to, right now we have basically a 2-to-1 slope there. If we increased it to just a little bit above 4-to-1, that would keep the coastal bank where it is. The problem with that is that we would increase the exposed face of the retaining wall needed for the swimming pool significantly. We probably add at least 2, 4, 6, probably 4 feet to the height of that wall. Basically, we're dropping the grade at the toe of the wall.
What's the wall currently? Is this the wall here that I've got? Is this where the retaining wall is?
Yes, yeah. So the top of that wall is about elevation, call it 41, and the bottom is 34. So it's 7 feet high now, and we add 4 more feet or more.
Wow.
This pool has an infinity edge on the northwesterly side, so it's not really a safety issue as far as the height, but it's what you see from the water. I mean, I think 11 to 12 feet will be significantly more visible from the water than a 7-foot wall. Even with the restoration plantings, over 20 years from now, with all the mature plantings, you probably won't notice it, but in the short term, it would certainly be a lot more noticeable.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Also, is this area that's marked down here in yellow, is that another retaining wall?
That's a new retaining wall. There's a lot of fill on that side of property, and a creosote timber wall or a treated wall, timber wall. And there's an old set of stairs or footpath that goes from the upper level below the wall
to nowhere.
The previous owner of this property owned the property to the south. It was her boathouse, and so she did have access from this property to the other one. But all that will be removed, so because of this, there's a steep slope there. We really can't remove the material. So we're proposing a wall to replace a large portion of what's there.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for David before we talk about the land management plan?
I do have questions, but I think I'd rather wait and hear everything.
Okay, Teresa, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Good morning again, Teresa Sprague with Blue Flex Design. The project we're kind of breaking down into a couple of different areas. We are including the restoration on the coastal bank itself, which totals about 7,400 square feet. And then the area where the existing structure is currently the pool, the patio, et cetera, as well as other areas that are invaded to the north and south of that within the 0 to 50-foot buffer, total about 6,500 square feet. And then there's a 1,200 square foot area, plus or minus, within the 50 to 100-foot buffer that we're proposing to restore as well. So overall on the site, we've got a mix of some native, but mainly invasive and exotic vegetation. So we've got shrub honeysuckle, vine honeysuckle, border privet, bittersweet, Japanese barberry, burning bush, and porcelain berry vine, which is pretty typical of the invasive plant community that we find throughout this area and throughout Chatham in general. There's also a significant amount of rugosa rose on the bank itself, just below the patio on the south side of the existing house. Native vegetation that we're finding in the area is eastern red cedar, mainly found towards the bottom of the bank on the north side of the property, as well as pitch pine, some oak, and again, this is all kind of found on the northern bank portion of the property, as well as black cherry, and then down at the top of the bulkhead, it's groundsel bush, high tide bush, Bacchus helmifolia, and bayberry has really recolonized that area just behind the timber bulkhead. Of course, we've got the set of elevated wooden steps, the swimming pool, et cetera, on the bank. If you look at our land management plan, we're showing some images on page 3 with our existing conditions that Yep, if you go up to page, 3 of 18, so that's page 5. So you can see there's a fall photo that I took of this slope. So that's looking at the northern portion of the coastal bank. So in the foreground, we've got it covered entirely with Asiatic bittersweet, but in the background, we've got some healthy oak and eastern red cedar that would be protected and would remain throughout the management process. And if you look on that land management plan on page 5, there are some images that show the area just on the coastal bank, just below that existing patio, is mainly rugosa rose. You can see the shrub honeysuckle that comprises almost the entire understory layer near the top of the bank around the existing stairs. Looking down those existing stairs, we can see all of that baccharis right at the top of the bulkhead, which is in really good shape. So we'd propose to obviously protect that and encourage that to continue to fill in more. And then the last photograph on the lower right-hand side is just a picture of the existing patio, retaining walls, swimming pools, etc. And all of the vegetation in this area is non-native, exotic, or invasive that comprises almost the entire landscape throughout this area. So we would be proposing a full restoration of both the coastal bank area. If we go back to the planting plan, the area that's sort of in the bluish green color, or it's kind of showing up as a little bit more of a grayish green color on your screen, is the coastal bank restoration. And then the areas that are showing in the more olive green color within the 0 to 50 and the 50 to 100 is a mix of reclamation of the area that's currently hardscape or structure, so the swimming pool, the patio. The area to the north of the existing swimming pool and patio is currently lawn. So we'd be proposing to completely restore that area with native vegetation as well. And then the area to the south below the proposed retaining wall, where the existing rotted timber wall is located, is really a mix of English ivy and some other invasive vegetation, but a good canopy layer in there. So really we'd be proposing to remove the English ivy, protect the existing canopy layer, and get some shrubs established where there's any gaps in the understory. That 4-foot wide staircase is rotting, would be removed, and that area would be restored. The native tree canopy in there is healthy. There are some Leyland Cypress trees in there that are in okay condition. There's several, at some point you can tell somebody tried to plant several Leyland Cypress trees to, I'm presuming, provide screening between the two properties. Many of them just died. There wasn't enough light. It's not the appropriate spot. But those that lived are okay. They're not damaged. They are providing some wildlife habitat value, so nesting and cover habitat. So we would propose to just allow those to remain. It's evergreen screening, non-invasive, although not native. It's not doing any harm and providing some habitat value. And then we would remove the dead Leyland cypress trees and replant those with appropriate shrubs, bayberry down in that area. So in total, we're planting 11 trees on the site, 274 shrubs. Our tree species include eastern red cedar, white oak, red oak, and serviceberry. And then our maritime shrub community would include black chokeberry, some more baccharis, inkberry holly, winterberry holly, bayberry, Virginia rose, viburnum, clethra with some sweet fern, and some dwarf bush honeysuckle just in the upper areas. So something that's a little bit lower growing around pathways, etc. So they don't grow into the path and wouldn't require any pruning to keep them out of pathways. We are proposing to remove 6 trees, pines, some native pines, some non-native pines along the edge of the pathway that's proposed to lead down to the existing stairway down to the bank. They're all in poor shape. They've been pruned, hazardous. There are 1 or 2 native pitch pines and the rest are non-native pines. And again, we'd be mitigating for those by planting the eastern red cedars and the oaks just to the north of that. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the proposed restoration mitigation plan.
Okay, thank you. All right, Bob, now you can, now that you've heard that, you have.
Yeah, so just to swivel a little bit back, to the alternative site plan, so I understand the reasoning for not preferring it, but of course, what it does offer is basically no increased coverage in the NDZ. I noticed that when you compare the two, the primary and the alternative plans, the deck, the size of the deck in the alternative plan is much smaller, and I was wondering why that was the case. And the follow-up to that is, why couldn't it be similar to that in the primary plan?
Well, we didn't fully vet this alternative. We basically came up with a quick sketch of what something would look like trying to redevelop within the existing footprint. We didn't get everything the client wanted in this. It was just a starting point to see what it would look like if we tried to develop an existing footprint.
Okay, so the deck there is just a concept rather than an actual proposal. Correct. Okay. Well, it did lead me to wonder. So with the I know then, comparatively speaking, the deck, of course, now I understand is comparing a sketch to a plan. The deck for the primary plan is, on the face of it, at least comparatively speaking, much larger. I was wondering, if that deck were reduced, I assume that would reduce the coverage within the NDZ to some degree.
Yes, it would. But this primary site plan has a net reduction in the NDZ.
It does.
Yeah,
it does. Wait a minute. I thought that the primary plan had an increase.
Not in the NDZ. It's 150 foot.
Oh, just in the 50 to 100. Okay.
Yeah.
I got it. All right. So swiveling back to the planting plan, I think there's some discrepancies again between what the planting plan and what the land management plan says are the plants that are the number of plants that are coming out and the number of plants that are going in. So Teresa, if you could also look at making sure that those two are aligned with each other. I don't believe that they are. It says there's 9 trees coming out in one place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Six trees on the bank and then 3 trees within the 100-foot buffer.
Right. So
9 total.
Somewhere it says there are 15 native trees going in. That's on the table in the plan, but the land management plan says 11 trees.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Things like that. And I think there's a similar discrepancy with regard to the shrubs.
Okay, we'll double check that. Thank you.
Of the trees that are coming out, you mentioned that some are infected or some are invasive. How many, or if any, are neither infected nor invasive?
The trees at the edge of the 100-foot buffer zone, I have to admit, I did not assess the health of those trees. They're coming out for the construction of the house.
Okay, so it doesn't really, in essence, matter that much. Okay. Okay, I think those are really the only questions I had. Obviously, if the project were approved as it was, the amount of vegetation that's going in, the natives that were going in, would be an obvious improvement. Oh yeah, I did have a question about what would be the nature of the lawn on the front of the house, away from the water, within the 50 to 100.
So we would always specify a fescue lawn, a Cape Cod lawn, and going back to the earlier discussion of clover in the lawn, that's standard Cape Cod lawn and standard in a mix. So it would be that Cape Cod lawn mix with fescue as the base grass.
Okay, I assume that's the case, but I didn't actually see that discussed.
Okay, I'll make sure there's a
just
note.
Going forward, if you as long as you put that in there, then we don't have to ask.
Okay, perfect.
And I think that's it.
Okay. David, I have a question. What will be underneath this deck?
We haven't considered that because it's the north side of the house and it is a large deck. at a minimum, will probably be pea stone or something like that, to keep the soil in place.
Yeah.
There might be some opportunity on the north side to put some plantings within a few feet of the underside. It might get enough sunlight, but the rest of it, I think it's going to be in so much shade. What Teresa shows being planted right up to it is about all we can get.
Yeah, no, I was just mostly curious about making sure that the soil is held in place, and then the stone would do that. And there's a second patio, proposed patio down on the southwestern side. And what is that material?
That would be a dry laid, I believe. I don't think we've chosen anything, but it certainly can be dry laid.
Okay.
It's not that big an area. I think they're spending most of their time on the large deck.
Yeah.
This is more of a connector from one side of the house to the other.
Yeah, I noticed, but what got my attention was a reference in the narrative, and I can't put my finger on exactly where it is, but it said some new impervious areas are proposed. And I was trying to understand what those everything seems pervious to me.
Yeah, from a stormwater perspective, it doesn't really matter if it's a dry laid patio or not. You're going to get almost the same amount of runoff. It's just where it goes. Do you collect it and send it someplace subsurface, or do you allow it to infiltrate between within the grout lines of a dry laid? So that's why that comment's in there.
Okay. So there's nothing. So the driveway, all of these hardscapes are pervious.
Yes.
Okay.
Semi-pervious.
Yes. And do you need to go to the zoning board with this?
Yes, we do.
And has that been filed?
Yes, it has.
Okay. Do you have a date?
I do, but I'll give it to you in a minute.
That's okay. I just want to make sure you have filed. That's the main.
Yeah, we have filed.
Okay.
I'm from home, so I don't have access to.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure it's filed. That's the important bit for us. Okay. Bob Del Vecchio, questions or comments from you?
Yes, to the north of the proposed path, there's that, or where the path will be, there's that shed that will be removed. And there's some invasive burning bush around it. All that will be removed, correct, Teresa?
Yes, that's correct. It's the pool equipment is currently located in that area. So that will obviously all be removed, and that entire area will be restored, including all the invasive vegetation removed.
Okay. And to the west of the proposed patio, there's some, I think there are one or two Leyland Cypress on the bank.
Yeah, there's a large yew tree that we would propose to remove. And then as part of the regrading and the restoration.
So it's a yew. It's not a Leyland Cypress.
On the south portion of the bank, there's some Leyland Cypress, and then there's a yew that's located on the west portion of the bank itself.
Okay, I thought it was Leyland Cypress. Okay. So that's going to be removed and replanted then.
Yeah, and then we're planting an oak tree and a number of amelanchier on the bank.
Okay, and the Bob mentioned the lawn. Is that going to be irrigated?
We have not discussed irrigation outside of the 50-foot buffer with the property owners. In general, we propose irrigation in order to get the lawn established and then allow it to naturalize.
Okay, and I would just propose that within the 50, there would be no irrigation. there's a little bit of, I think there's a little bit of lawn between the 0 and 50 to the south side of the house.
Around the driveway.
Yeah, so I would propose that remain unirrigated, non-irrigated.
Yeah, one thing that we have not begun, our focus was mainly on the mitigation and restoration for this portion of the project. We will be working with the property owners on a full landscape plan, but we have not gotten to that point yet. And obviously at that time, anything that needs to be approved by the commission would be brought back before you.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tom, questions or comments?
The only comment I have is that these small, what I call small lot developments, unfortunately, just because of their small size, defeat the buffers that are built into the regulations and into the bylaw, and it's very frustrating to see that. And although I have to hand it to Teresa and David, they've done a very good job of minimizing the impact given the very limited nature of the site.
Yep.
That's it.
I have to agree with that observation. Karen, questions or comments from you?
Maybe I missed it, but could you discuss the proposed footpath that's going to the existing stairs and what that's going to look like?
So to overcome the grade changes, because we're adding material there to restore that area, we show approximately 3 locations where they'd be either a timber or stone steppers, and then the pathway in between could be any number of things. If the dock is used on a infrequent basis, and when I say infrequent is a couple of times a week, it could be grass. If they're avid boaters and are out there every single day, then we would think about maybe putting down a pea stone or some type of mulch or something like that. But we really haven't discussed that yet. And
Okay, thank you. And also the existing overgrown timber wall that remains and the retaining wall, it's right around where the proposed silt fence and wattles are. Is that remaining or is that being removed because the silt fence and wattles are being put in?
They're not being removed because of the wattles. They're being removed because they're deteriorating and they're almost to the point where they're not serving a purpose. So
okay, but they are being removed.
Yes. Because
it doesn't, at least what I'm seeing, it just says that it says remains, but it doesn't say what's happening with them.
Yeah, that's my poor grasp of the English language.
Remains, not remains.
The remains of a timber wall.
Right.
But and this came up on another project a couple of weeks ago, and I will change the language of that.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. That's actually I noticed that and I said I got that remains, but the remains will be removed.
Yes.
And could you add, and I don't see it in the legend, so maybe I'm just missing it, but call out these retaining walls and label them. They're not labeled.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, and dimensions. Okay. Any further questions, comments? Let me look at my list here for revisions is to fix the language on the removal of the timber wall and call out the retaining walls. To double check the numbers of the plants on the planting plan and narrative to make sure everything is consistent. She'll add a description of the lawn, which will be great because we'll use that going forward for all these projects. The second patio will be specified as dry laid. Anything else?
Madam Chair, somebody has a hand up.
Oh, I'm screen sharing, so I can't see that. Hang on. Let me unshare. Yes, there's a PTP. You are unmuted, so hello.
Good morning. Yes, this is Paul and Judy Peterson. We are at the abutters at 79 Kent Road, which would be just north of the Van Nest, the old Van Nest property. Yeah. We just received a couple days ago the notice of the abutters notice of this project, so we were flying a little blind in reacting to it, and initially concerned about the site plan location of the 50-foot and the 100-foot lines. And since receiving a day or so ago the copy of the drawings of the site plan, we have less of an issue of that at the moment. And I think we'd just like to render a couple comments about the location of this project, with essentially within the NDZ, except for a small portion of it. And that, as Mr. Clark stated, they're moving it back, but it's only 150 square feet, which is not a significant amount of movement. Our house, which we purchased in 2012, is essentially 100% within the NDZ. It's very close to the top of the bank everywhere. And it just struck us as we worked our way through understanding the conservation issues and the state issues that one almost has to accept their fate when they buy a house located within that zone, which means tearing it down and building a different house, moving it here and there to try to negotiate your way into getting something a little more is really not a good stewardship. And so we undertook the complete renovation of our house down to the studs, and that means new wiring, new roofs, new everything. And it was quite a project. Was it more expensive than tearing it down and rebuilding it? I don't know. But so it turns out that the house kind of looks like it did before, except the inside of it. The demolition of the Van Nest house is no small matter. That has a full basement under the entire house. So the excavation of that site in the NDZ will be substantial. In addition, as one of the first commissioners mentioned, the decking that's there now, and we're very familiar with the Van Nest house, is rather minor. And the addition of approximately 2,000 square feet of incremental decking in the NDZ doesn't seem to be some small matter. So I guess what we'd like to say on this is that it just seems to me that a better plan with this site, when it's located within the NDC, is more along the alternative dimensions that was mentioned in one of the site plans presented, and not this full-throated renovation of this area. And lastly, I would just, I would say that whatever construction plan is approved, that Kent Road and Cove Hill, even coming into the site, is really a narrow roadway, and our driveway stops just before the driveway for the old Van Nest property. And we would ask that somehow you add to your order of conditions that no construction vehicles be allowed to park on Kent Road. Beyond our driveway towards the property is fine, but downhill towards Cove Hill, we can't be blocked in, as we found ourselves frequently with the Johnson renovation on the project next door to us on the other side of our driveway. It creates a huge problem. So anyway, those are our observations, and we thank you for letting us speak.
Thank you. Thank you. Representative of the applicant, any response to those observations?
Just quickly, you know, from my understanding, going all the way back to 2006, when the no disturb zone was created, The fundamental purpose of the variance procedure is to effect a positive change, and we feel what we're proposing is a positive change to the coastal bank in this area.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Bill Wright, I think the removal of the swimming pool and the brick foundation and the patio around it represents a very significant improvement in the property.
I think, this project and application, like so many others, presents us with this very tough problem of pre-existing structures and hardscape in areas which we currently would never allow them to be. And while our rules and regulations don't allow, there's no provision that says they are grandfathered and protected, we have to look at each proposal as if it were being proposed for the first time, kind of, but in which case in this you would say you can't put a pool right there at the top of the coastal bank. But the problem is that if, as Mr. Peterson suggested, you renovate what's currently there, such as in your alternative, you end up in a position that's less environmentally beneficial or more harmful environmentally. And that's what becomes the conundrum. So we could deny a project on the bank and say it's not permitted, in which case the homeowner would say, "Oh, fine, I'll just renovate what's there." And what's there is much more impactful. So at the end of the day, at the end of our analysis, what we're going to be called upon is to assess whether this proposal ends in a net benefit to the resource areas. So I hear all the comments and I appreciate them. And, we all appreciate that these are tough questions that we don't have any clear guidance on which way to resolve these questions. So we continue to do them on a case-by-case basis. And so are there any further comments or questions?
Yeah, one more comment regarding the construction access and parking out on the street. That is an issue that's fully vetted by the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that's the more appropriate place for that.
They will deal with that. Yep. Okay. Then will everybody be able to, if I continue this to the 24th of March, 2 weeks' time, is that enough time to make the changes in the list that we just went over?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Then is there a motion to continue this to March the 24th?
Rawls move to continue to March 24th.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote to continue 73 Kent Road to March the 24th. Commissioner Rawls?
Aye.
Delvecchio?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Latin?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's unanimous. We will revisit this on March 24th. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, who participated for that. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul, ready to move on.
Moving on, 150 Meadowview Road, Philip A. Richardson Nominee Trust, Thomas Beneville and Holly Beneville, no SE10 number yet. Project proposed demolition of existing garage, construction of new two-car garage at same address, assessors map 10D, parcel S4.
Good morning again, David Clark, Clark Engineering on behalf of Thomas and Holly Beneville. I just want to point out I made an error in populating the NOI form. I used an old form, and some of the information from the previous application remained in the applicant section. Mainly the Philip Richardson Trust is not part of this application. It is strictly Thomas and Holly Beneville. So the project is fundamentally a garage addition. A portion of the garage is within land subject to coastal storm flowage, and the 100-year floodplain is associated with a freshwater pond that is hydraulically connected to the Oyster Pond River. We show the 50 and 100 foot buffer zone to the approximate BVW. I say approximate BVW in that it's a lawn that goes right down to the pond, and they'll replace that at the top of the bank is the limit of the BVW. The landform is less than 10-to-1, so there's no coastal bank. Actually, I think in my narrative, I said that the top of the bank to the inland pond is one and the same as a coastal bank, so it meets the definition of a coastal bank. So as stated, there's the garage addition. I believe the portion that's within the floodplain, I think I said in my narrative, about 60 square feet, more or less. There is a second addition on the west side of the house. The addition itself is right up to the 100-foot line from the top of the bank. So there will be some excavation within the 100-foot buffer, and then backfill. That area would be backfilled upon completion of the addition, and there will really be no change to the buffer zone there. Portion of the property that's outside your jurisdiction, on the northwest corner, there is the old Title V system. This property is available to be hooked to the municipal sewer, and we show that line on the plan. That's an elevated system. It was elevated because of the proximity to groundwater, and it won't be used anymore. So the idea is to remove that. So, but it's not in your jurisdiction, but we feel that it's important to note it being removed, in that it kind of serves as a wildlife barrier right now, and certainly removing that much concrete wall will make the area better and offset the impacts of an addition on the east side of the house. I believe Phil Cheney is here. He developed the restoration or mitigation plan. Basically, we're proposing all the mitigation down by the pond, where we presume the commission would like to see it as close to the real resource area as possible. This does have to go to Zoning Board of Appeals. I don't know if a date's been set yet, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
But it's been filed with ZBA?
I believe so. I can't confirm that, though.
Okay. Check that. Okay, thank you. Phil?
Yes, Phil Cheney, landscape designer here, developed the mitigation plan. Just to review briefly, we're creating a buffer along the edge of the water there now, which is, again, just rough Cape Cod lawn that runs right to the edge. The owners themselves agree it's probably a good idea to get that revegetated in a better manner. So I'm showing a good assortment of native ground covers and shrubs in that area to replace the lawn. Additionally, as part of future project as well, they'd like to move the existing fence on the western side of the property up against Meadowview Road, and that's currently a large overgrown Leyland Cypress hedge running all along that area. So they'd like to relocate the fence a little bit closer to the property line and replace the Leyland Cypress in that area with the native red cedars. Additionally, there's a spruce just to the east of that area, which would be coming out as well because it's not very healthy, and we'll be adding a red cedar to replace that also. So I think that covers the mitigation plan. Any questions?
All right, thank you very much. Tom, we'll start with you. Any questions or comments?
Actually, I don't have any.
And I was starting with you. Gosh.
I know. I hate to pass on the generous offer that you've sent to me.
Okay, well, better luck next time. Bob Delvecchio.
All right. Headline news. Tom Clark has no questions.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's great that you're gonna replace the Leylands with the red cedar. Is that gonna be, I know we don't have any jurisdiction beyond the 100, but is that gonna be along the entire area or just in that space?
That's the intention to replace it. I'm not entirely sure yet. It'll be all red cedar, but it would be taking out all the Leylands, eventually replacing it with some other type of screen.
Oh, that's a good thing. I like the mitigation planting up against the little pond there because when I went out there, it looked like a green pond. It looked like it was all infested with algae. And so there's probably a lot of nutrients going into that pond somehow. But I think the planting up against the pond will serve the resource well. So I guess that's about all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Karen, any questions or comments?
The only thing I had was, it looks like the garage, the new garage is going to be like right on the 100-foot. Is that correct?
A portion of the garage is within the
Yeah, I
100
thought
feet,
so.
and
Okay.
and a smaller portion is within land subject to coastal storm flow.
Has
that
any
area, go ahead.
Has any consideration been made to possibly move the garage so it's not in the 100? It seemed like there was space. That's why I'm asking.
There is and there isn't. Obviously, looking at the plan, you could shift everything to the north and get it out of your jurisdiction. One of the issues is there's a chimney right there, just to north of the little porch entry to the house. So if we moved this structure further north, and that's kind of messing up the circulation pattern with the addition and getting into the house, the rest of the house. Again, as I said in a different project, if we moved it out of your jurisdiction, then all the mitigation down by the pond, which we think is a significant benefit to the pond, eliminating all that mowing right down to the top of the bank, it probably wouldn't happen. So I think giving up lawn area within the outer fringes of the buffer zone is less intrusive because of all the mitigation that's being proposed. If that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask.
Yep, no, I understand.
Okay, Bob Rawls, any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions. When I was at the property, looking at that expansive lawn all the way down to the pond, it sort of struck me that that's a sort of a prime example of why the Wetlands Protection Act was created in the first place. So it's good to add mitigation there. I would ask whether or not we can do a little demarcation of it so that those who are mowing the rest of it don't consider that to be a non-special area in any way.
I can discuss that with the Benevilles as to what's an appropriate demarcation.
Yep. Okay.
All right, are there any further questions from anybody, participants?
And I think the homeowner wanted to speak. He had his hand up.
Okay, hang on, let me stop sharing so I can.
He doesn't have his hand up now, but he did before.
Okay, is there anybody else who wishes to say anything? Nope. Okay. Then this is ready to go to the April 7th work session for the order of conditions. Is there a motion?
Yeah, Bob Rawls, so moved.
Oh, wait. I'm hearing
Clark,
somebody.
second.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Tom Benville here. I did have my hand up. The only comment I was going to make to the question of moving the garage further north was that to get in and out of the garage at that location, there's a stand of pitch pines right on the road. So one of the reasons we wanted to leave it where it was that we like those pines and we didn't want to have to cut them down. So that was my only comment.
Well, thank you for that. That's actually that's helpful to know. So there's a further benefit to the proposal as it's currently put together. Okay, so we have a motion and seconded to continue this to the work session. Roll call vote. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Delvecchio.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. We
Thank you
will
very
take
much.
that work session for the order of conditions. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Benneville, for your observation. It's helpful. All right, Paul, moving on.
Moving on, hold on 1 second. That's done. Moving on, 2 Oyster Drive, Timothy and Tracy Joel. We have no SE number yet for that. Proposal to raise existing dwelling, construct new dwelling in same footprint, meeting FEMA, NFIP standards, and building code at same address, map 16A, parcel H154A. Just a quick note, Thad did send me a condensed file. We weren't able to get it up on the My Town government site because it was too large, but I did put it up this morning. I don't know if Thad wants to handle the screen or anyway.
Yep, he's welcome to.
Okay.
I don't mind presenting at all.
Thank you. Good.
So for the record, Thad Eldridge, he's southeast. Tim Jewell might be on for another moment, but he had an 11 o'clock, unfortunately. So
I moved my 11 o'clock, so I'll be able to listen in. Thanks, Thad.
Excellent. So looking at the existing site, we are in the little beach area. We've had a few projects here in the past couple of years. It's a low area in town, subject to the floodplain. We're looking at ground elevations between 4 and 6, maybe up to 8. The 100-year floodplain is at 13. And we have had some minor flooding in the past out here, up to around elevation 6, give or take. I don't know, I mentioned it in the narrative, there's an isolated vegetated wetland across the street from the site, and it's one that should give us all hope. That was a manicured and maintained lawn area, not really turf lawn, more of Cape Cod. Around 2018, they let that go, and it's rebounding back into a pretty vibrant wetland. Although I haven't been out there since the last exceptionally high tide, so I'm not sure how well it survived through that, but we'll see this summer. So the existing property, it's a small property, a little over 3,000 square feet. There's an existing house, driveway. They're tied into the shared septic system that's out back, but they don't own any of that. They just have an easement to it. There's an existing patio that's within the 50-foot from the isolated vegetated wetland. I did know, the real quality of that IVW. We have a fairly substantial road between the site and that wetland. As mentioned, we're entirely within the land subject to coastal storm flowage. The proposal is to take down the building, build a new building in the same footprint. I know I have an extra 10 square feet allotted for it. They do their best at getting it in the right spot, but if we're over when we're said and done, we have to go back to zoning. So I'd rather give them a little buffer now with the expectation that they're going to fall under that coverage. The proposal will represent a slight retreat from that IVW. It's a decreasing the amount of coverage on the site. The first floor will be above the design flood elevation. There will be flood vents put on the building itself. The slight increase in impervious areas because we've counted all of the stepping stones, which are more or less pervious as water will get around them. And I'm not sure if anybody went to the web page, but I've also included some images because we've talked about this before. But this was an exceptionally high tide that happened last month. This is the cul-de-sac at Little Beach Road. There's a good foot of standing water, and that's all salt water that came up from the marina. And reviewing, oh, I have to go back a couple. So this is the low point. This is the Pelletier house, and then the Chipman house that's under, or that's Doggett's house, and then Chipman sits under construction. This low point has no surface connectivity to that water, but is completely flooded because as the tide rises in, it saturates all of the sand, and it fills in the low areas. And you can see further beyond, there is some water that's flooded out in the backyard of Mr. Pelletier's property. And this just goes back to during the storm event, the land cannot absorb water anyhow because it will already be filled. So all in all, we have a decent project. The landscaping will remain landscaping. The Jewels have no desire for lawn area. They will replant everything with native plant species. No mitigations required because we are decreasing that hardscape all in all. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's start with Bob Rawls, if any questions.
Well, since we're talking about the area across the street, that you said, I think you said something like it was mowed. Do you happen to know who was mowing it?
I believe it was part of the condominium.
Okay.
It's across the street, but I'm not sure.
All right. So, all right, that's good to know. I have no real questions. There's a patio, I guess, going in. What is that? A dry laid patio?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, everything will be dry laid out here. They're going to continue the crushed shell around all of the stepping stones and around the patio.
Right. Okay. Yeah, this seems like a straightforward. We've seen these before, and I have no issue with it. The plantings are all native, and so I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Bob Delvecchio?
Yeah, so the patio, the existing patio, is that going to remain or is that going to be replaced?
There's not enough room to be able to keep anything on the site during construction, so that will be pulled out and a new patio will be put in place.
In the same footprint?
Oh, smaller.
Smaller, yeah.
Okay.
Show your, yeah, so.
You can see the existing patio comes out here to the street, and we're 3.3 feet off of the street line, and the proposed patio is going to be about 8 feet off of the street line.
Okay. All right. And the walkway around the house, how is that going to change?
So currently in the backyard, there's a deck, and in the front yard, there are stepping stones. In the front yard, there will continue to be stepping stones, and then in the backyard, rather than deck, it will be stepping stones.
I see. Okay.
There is still a deck coming in the back. That'll be a first floor, which is effectively second floor deck.
Yeah.
With a set of stairs down for the second means of egress.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Bob. Tom, questions?
I'll take this opportunity to shock Bill Riley again and say I have no questions. Other than whether or not this requires a ZBA filing, and if so, has it occurred?
Mr. Stribert was working on that, and he will be filing hopefully this week.
Okay. All right, Karen, any questions or comments from you?
know I don't have any questions at this time because I think they've been dealt with. As long as native plants are being put in, I can see the necessary, action that has to happen for this poor house.
Yeah. Agreed. I have a question, Thad, about, so the transforming isolated wetland across the street. So it's transforming from a mowed lawn to a more naturalized wetland. Did you actually do a delineation? Does it fit all three criteria for wetland at this point?
It fits at least two of them.
Sorry?
It fits at least two of them. The soils are, we didn't even do soil borings because it meets the hydrology and it meets the plant species.
So once this area started becoming more permanently wet, the new obligates, I'm not sure whether there's obligates in there or not, but these wetlands plants have begun colonizing it. Okay. And then presumably the soils are on their way to becoming hydric if they aren't already.
They could be at this point.
Okay. Okay. It's an interesting learning opportunity for me to see how an upland area transitions to becoming a wetland when water enters the scene.
Or more importantly, it is a lawn that was in an area that wants to be wet, and it was supposed to be lawn. And then as it was let go, I mean, it was only 2018 that they stopped mowing it, and it has been transitioning into this this wetland.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. Okay. So the foundation will be FEMA compliant so that when the inevitable flooding occurs here, it will flow straight through the foundation. There's nothing to divert flood water to any other location.
Correct. There'll be flood vents installed in accordance with the FEMA provisions and the building code. So they'll be on one side, flow right through to the other.
And the only things that are stored in there, so part of that foundation is going to be used for a garage. So there will be a vehicle.
Yes.
Okay.
Garage and storage. There's a whole list of appropriate items to store. It's basically anything that can get wet. Anything that you want to get wet, don't store it down there.
Right. We also have standard language for restricting any kinds of potential pollutants or toxic materials that could be released during a flood event, which will add to the.
Those will not be stored as well.
Yeah. No drywall, nothing like that.
There is a fire barrier required under the building code within the garage.
It requires, what is it?
There's a fire barrier, fire resistant material is required in the garage space.
Oh, okay.
In order to meet the building code so that if a car were to go up in flames, it wouldn't burn down the house.
Okay.
It would slow down the burn.
Right, but no, I'm talking about no drywall in anticipation of use of the area.
Correct. So every building material below the design flood elevation, below elevation 14, must be constructed with flood resistant material.
Okay.
And there's a FEMA bulletin on that, or a FEMA guideline that goes through every material that you could build with and what is its level of flood proofness.
Okay. Okay, just checking. Just recently we had one where we noticed that drywall had been, the foundation area had been sectioned into rooms and drywall was being applied, which was not appropriate. Okay, I don't have any other questions. I think this is then ready for a motion to take this to the work session on April 7th for an order of conditions.
Rawls moved to continue to April 7th for orders and conditions.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote for 2 Oyster Drive to go to the work session on the 7th. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Del Vecchio.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye. That's unanimous. We will
Thank you so
get up on April 7th. Thank you very much.
All right, have a great day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Paul, moving on.
Sure, I missed the first few minutes of the meeting, so made an
Mr.
announcement.
He indicated that he'd be asking for, he was submitted a request for a continuance to April 14th for 68 Shell Drive. We have to vote on that.
All right, I'll just read the public announcement. 68 Shell Drive, Chatham Point LLC, SE 10 3466. Proposed relocation of existing dwelling and barn, construction of a new dwelling within land subject to coastal storm flowage, same address. Assessors map 14K, parcel W50.
Okay. Request has been submitted for a continuance to April 14th. Is there a motion to approve that request?
Rawls, motion to approve the request to move to April 14th, continue to.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote to continue 68 Shell Drive to April 14th. Commissioner Rawls,
Aye.
Delvecchio,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's unanimous. That's continued. Okay, Paul.
Okay, moving on to the next items on the agenda. I'm going to read these in tandem because they're tied together. 47 Little Beach Road, Crimson Peak LLC, owner Morris Island Nominee Trust. SE 10 3421, continuance of hearing for notice of intent for the proposed demolition of an existing dwelling and septic system, construction of a new dwelling, meeting FEMA NFIP standards, installation of new septic tank at 47 Little Beach Road, assessment 16A, parcel H50, and 53 Little Beach Road, Crimson Peak LLC, owner Morris Island Nominee Trust, the applicant, SE 10 3419. Continuance of hearing for notice of intent, proposed demolition of existing dwelling and septic, construction of new dwelling, meeting FEMA NFIP standards, installation of new septic system, same address, assessment map 16A, parcel H52, bad, indicated.
So we received a request to withdraw these without prejudice. So we need to have a motion to approve the request to withdraw both of these applications without prejudice.
Rawls, move to approve the motion by the applicant to withdraw without prejudice for both properties.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote to approve the request to withdraw for 47 Little Beach and 53 Little Beach without prejudice. Commissioner Rawls,
Aye.
Delvecchio,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's approved. Okay, Paul, next one.
Okay, next one is 314 Morris Island Road, Timothy Sheehan, trustee, 692 Tremont, Unit 4, Realty Trust, SC 10. There is an SC number assigned now. It's 3468. This is an after-the-fact notice of intent for the proposed installation of a garden and shed at same address, assessors map 15A, parcel H87. The applicant requested a continuance to April 14th.
Is there a motion to approve that continuance?
Rawls, move to continue to April 14th.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote to continue 314 Morris Island Road to April 14th. Commissioner Rawls,
Aye.
Delvecchio,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye, so that's unanimous. That's continued. Same again, Paul.
Next, 201 Old Harbor Road, Scott Brennan Properties LLC, applicant Brenna C. Melvin, owner SE, there is an SE number 10, it's 103458. Continuance of a notice of intent for proposed construction of a garage, cottage, removal of existing cottage, and relocation of a shed at same address, assessors map 15F, parcel 62A. The applicant has requested a continuance to April 14th.
Okay, motion to approve the continuance request?
Ms. Rawls, move to approve the continuance to April 14th.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote for 201 Old Harbor Road to April 14th. Commissioner Rawls,
Aye.
Delvecchio,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's continued to April 14th. Okay, one more, Paul.
Yes, this is a long one. 83 Seagull Road, 30 Wickets Way, parcel N133, AKA 0, to Squantum Road, 27, 59, 75, and 97, Killaby Run, Seagull Enterprises Property LLC, USA Weather Station, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Quonset Associates, Inc., New Milford Realty Corporation, 59 Killaby Run Trust, Chatham Seabreeze LLC, and TR 97 Killaby Nominee Trust, SE 10 3424. Continuance of a hearing for a notice of intent for the dredging and sand nourishment placement at 83 Seagull Road, 30 Wickets Way, parcel N133 AK0 to Squantum Road, 27, 59, 75, and 97 Killaby Run. Assessors map parcels 15A-1, H98, 15A2, N133, 15A3, US 1, 15A3, N136, 15A3, N137, 14A3, N131, and 14A3B. The applicant has requested a continuance to April 14th.
It'll take us that long to read it again. Okay. Motion to approve the request for the continuance to April 14th.
Rawls move to continue to April 14th.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Delvecchio.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye. That's unanimous. That's continued to the 14th.
Next on the agenda is an extension request, 520 Shore Road, Sandbars LLC, SE 10 3083. Contract arrangements taking longer than anticipated is the reason for the extension. This is the final extension that's available. I did speak with somebody from Bobby Hours Company who's doing the work. We have a pre-construction meeting on Friday, but I believe they still want to go forward with this extension request because we're bumping up pretty close to the expiration date, which is the beginning of April.
Yeah.
So we recommend approval of the extension.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the extension?
Rawls move to approve the final extension.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote to final extension for 520 Shore Road. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Delvecchio.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's approved.
Next on the agenda and the final items are two certificates of compliance requests. 33 Woodcarver Knoll, Russell G. and Teresa Golden, SE 10 3244. Completion of hardscape and drainage at 33 Woodcarver Knoll. The project was for the rebuilding of a timber retaining walls with field stone and renovation under the deck by removing pea stone and cobblestone and replacing it with dry laid bluestone. There were two dry wells that would be installed. Bluestone patio was going to be put under the deck, outdoor grilling area, and a fire pit was built. There was some mitigation. I think this is Thad's. If he's no, actually it's not. It's William Wilcox. So they've completed the checklist and they've submitted their photographs. There's a recording of the order. We are now past the 3-year requirement for the growing season, the mitigation, and the rest of the project looks in good shape, and I would recommend approval of this certificate of compliance.
Good. A straightforward one that ticks all boxes. That's great. Is there a motion to approve the issuance of the certificate of compliance for this?
Yes, Rawls move to approve the certificate of compliance.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote to approve certificate of compliance for 33 Woodcarver Knoll. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Delvecchio.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye. That's unanimous. That's approved.
All right, last on the agenda is 27 and 29 Pine Bluff Road, Mark and Flora McClellan, SC 10-3014, completion of alterations to 2 dwellings, mitigation plantings, and landscape management plan. This was a certificate submitted by Thad Eldridge. Thad does an excellent job with his certificate requests and does good work with documentation. The site was visited on February 4th, 2020. The work was completed in substantial compliance with the plans. That did note that all the irrigation had been removed on the coastal dune within the locust. However, there's an irrigation head on the coastal dune located on the abutters property, which I don't think is relevant to approving the certificate. Additionally, there are 2 irrigation heads and 1 control valve located outside the coastal dune on the locust. I still would recommend approval because they're not appearing to be in use. They might have been cut or disconnected. There is an ongoing condition, number 3, for the mitigation plantings. We have a letter from Wilkinson Ecological Design. They completed the work and they have visited the site. There's a letter from October 30th, 2020, and the mitigation looks to be in good shape. The order was recorded. Everything on the checklist has been done right, so I would recommend, there's a sketch plan also that was required, that's been submitted. So I'd recommend approval of the certificate of compliance.
All right, great, thank you. Motion to approve certificate of compliance for 27 and 29 Pine Bluff.
Rawls, move to approve the certificates of compliance.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Delvecchio.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye. That's unanimous. That's approved as well. And that's all. We have a motion to adjourn.
Bob Rawls, I move that we adjourn.
Clark, second.
Roll call vote to adjourn. Commissioner Rawls.
Aye.
Delvecchio.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Latin.
Aye.
I vote aye. We are adjourned. So let's just hang on though. I want to